Good morning, everyone. I am Reverend Brian Ferguson. I have the honour of serving as the minister here. And I couldn't make up my mind which one of two stories to tell for the Time for All Ages, so I'm going to tell both of them. So you're getting two stories for the price of one this morning. And the first story is basically about this ruler of this country, and he builds this new road, but he wants to see if people in this country appreciate the new road. So he says, okay, I'm going to give a prize to the person who travels on the road the best. And so people say, now I saw a puzzled look there from Jill, and I agree. What do you mean by traveling on the road the best? And so they asked him, well, what do you mean by the best? He said, you'll find out later. So some people dressed up in their fancy suits and my favorite tie, and they travel the road. Others get on their best horse and carriage. Some get in there, buy a new automobile. Some, get on their running clothes and run. That would not be me. and they run. And then the ruler's waiting at the end of the road, and this people comes, the first person there goes, did I win? He's like, no. And then the next person comes in a fancy car. No. The person comes, with like a whole horse and carriage. No. Eventually, everyone's almost there, and finally this family of four come. And they're covered in dirt, and they said, oh, that was a really hard journey. Are we last? And he said, yes, you are. He said, well, we found this bag of gold on the road, and we thought we'd give it to you because it doesn't belong to us. He said, well, where did you find the bag of gold? Well, there was this pile of rubble on the road. And the other people said, yes, I noticed. We had to climb over it or drive round it, and it really held us up. We didn't get there as quickly. And the person said, yeah, well, we actually cleared the rubble out the road, and we found this bag of gold underneath the rubble. And the king said, you traveled the road the best because you cleared it for other people. So you're the winners. You traveled the road best. And I love that idea that the way we travel the best is when we make it easy for other people. And I want to talk about a Unitarian woman who I feel typifies this story. And you may not have heard of her. She's not one of the more well-known people, but her name is Dorothea Dix. And she was alive in the 1800s, so over 200 years ago. And she grew up, her mother was very ill, and her dad was a little bit, basically kind of mean to the family. So she grew up in a fairly hard situation. But she ended up becoming a teacher. And then she ended up going in to teach in this women's prison. And she found the women in that who had mental health challenges, who were considered mentally ill, were actually chained up and naked in the prison. And she said, that is horrendous. Why are you treating people so badly? He said, oh, they're mentally ill. They don't really feel it. They don't really understand it. And Dorothea Dix was outraged at this. So she wrote to her legislators in Massachusetts. She actually visited every prison, male and female, in Massachusetts, and documented it all. And eventually, she got mental health hospitals opened for the first time in the United States. And she was actually responsible for opening 30 of them. And she was the first person that really, campaigned and looked out for those who were mentally ill, because they were really just discarded by society. Because she realized, despite what people may think, everyone is deserving of love, respect, and dignity, especially those who are mentally ill and who need our help. And she didn't just stop there in Massachusetts. She traveled all over the country and convinced many other states to open, and spoke in front of state legislators and got them to open up mental health hospitals. And in certain areas, there's still hospitals, mental health hospitals named after her. And on a side note, if you ever go to Boston, there's actually a water trough named after Dorothea Dix, because she also thought horses should be treated well too. So she's quite a woman, and she's not that well known, but she was a Unitarian because she realized that we were called to embody love to all people. The lead singer for James, who wrote that song, who wrote the lyrics for the song, he said he wrote it when he was feeling really alone one night. He said, being awake at 4 a.m. in the morning with no one to talk to. Being awake at 4 a.m. with no one to talk to. And he had struggled with his own mental health for some time. And in the bridge of the song that Sarah sang, it says, those who feel a breath of sadness, sit down next to me. Those who feel they're touched by madness, sit down next to me. Those who find themselves ridiculous, sit down next to me. In love, in fear, in hate, in tears. I think that's such a powerful song, because I think ultimately when we are struggling with mental health, there's biochemical reasons as well, but so much of it's a loss of connection. As John mentioned earlier, the Surgeon General in 2023 declared an epidemic of loneliness that's exacerbating mental health. And you can be lonely in a relationship, you can be lonely in a big family, you can be lonely in a religious community. And that's why it's up to us to reach out to one another. Sit down next to me. That is an anthem for my ministry. If you're ever struggling, there's always a place next to me. There's a lot of discomfort around mental health and admitting it. There's a stigma to this day. I think it's improved in recent years, but there's still a lot of stigma around mental illness and mental health. And when I worked as a chaplain back in Austin, I actually worked in the mental health teenage ward. And that was devastating, seeing young people as young as 10 in the ward. But I remember this one particular young girl. She was 12 years old. She had already attempted to take her life 3 times. She had been abused sexually since she was 7. And when I read that, I realized that was the age of my daughter. 7. And that struck me hard. Someone could abuse someone like that. But then the impact on her, that she was struggling, she felt she had no words, she felt she had no connection, she wasn't connected to her parents, she wasn't connected to the children's school. She struggled even to connect in the ward, and we ran groups. And I desperately wanted to help her. I'm not sure I did. She was there, she left, and I never heard from her again. But we think, mental health has got so many causes. There's certainly the biochemical thing. There's the trauma of being abused. I also worked in 2007. I worked at the VA hospital in the psych ward with dual diagnosis veterans. Dual diagnosis, those with mental health concerns and addiction. A lot of it was PTSD from Vietnam. Do you know the veterans had to fight the VA to get the PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, recognized by them? And I saw lives torn apart. And I remember the former partners would come in. This was an all-male ward. But a lot of the partners would come in who, it was like ex-wives usually, and they said, oh yeah, I divorced this disease. I didn't divorce him. That's why I show up. But these people who had perfectly normal life went to Vietnam, went to the first Gulf War, which we often forget about, and they were starting to get people from Afghanistan and Iraq, 20-year-olds whose personality changed as a result of the experience in Iraq, of Afghanistan, and the trauma. The suicide rate of veterans is twice the normal people who are non-veterans. 18 veterans, are taking their life every day. That means during the course of this service, some veteran may take their life due to mental health concerns. But it's not just veterans. We see it with the homeless, be it down outside the Safeway here in Redwood City, or I see it in San Francisco. We see so many people struggling with mental health services, and we don't provide any. There's a shortage of mental health medical providers. I think it's a justice issue. We know with mental health it's a pastoral issue, but I believe mental health is a justice issue, and we need to take that on seriously. Because there's real issues around mental health in this country. And as we can say it's a pastoral issue, but we need to change the system. We need to make sure that medical coverage provides mental health. All medical coverage provides mental health benefits. We need to take away the stigma of mental health. It's not a character flaw. It can be a result of trauma, it can be a result of genetics, it can be a result of biochemistry. It doesn't matter. As Unitarian Universalists, we are called to love all people, to respect and value the worth of all people. That's what Dorothea Dix did in the story I told for Time for All Ages. She opened mental health hospitals. We need more of them now. It is a justice issue for all people. And we're all impacted by it. I've told you many times before that my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Now, she was back in Britain with a national healthcare system that was of great support to her, and she got good care. My daughter struggles with depression and ADHD. She's doing well, but it's a thing she will live with. I invite you, if you feel comfortable, who raise your hands has struggled with mental health or knows someone who's struggled with mental health? Everyone. Everyone. We need to work to take away the stigma of mental health, because religion has been very, very harmful around mental health. We've got this idea of demons that, that people are possessed by demons, or people are deserving of punishment. Sometimes I heard that when I was in the mental health hospital, people said, I'm being punished by God through my mental illness. No, you're not. But that is the real fear that they have, and it's a religion that calls the love and respect and worth of all people. We need to remind them of that. We need to provide connections for them. And I was so proud of this congregation with Joe Ragsdale. Joe died in February when he was hit by a car. He was a member of this congregation for 10, 15 years, I'm not quite sure. He came with severe dementia. He sang in the choir, and he was part of the choir. That was his family, that was his home. We had a memorial service for him in March. And I was so proud that we provided a home for him where Joe had very little wealth due to his dementia. His ex-wife kept in relationship, Liz, with her, and she really appreciated all the work we did. But it was not easy. I mean, when you're dealing with someone with mental health concerns, he had dementia, it can be incredibly frustrating. It can really challenge. When we confess that we love all people, the inherent worth and dignity of all people, that gets challenged through mental health. For families supporting loved ones with mental health, it's not easy. Can we support them? Because it's often said that mental health is the no casserole disease. If someone gets diagnosed with dementia, no one takes a casserole. Someone gets diagnosed with cancer, they take a casserole. We provide food. But fortunately, this religious community, we are not a no casserole congregation. If you've got a need, we will provide casserole, we will provide desserts, we will provide whatever you want, more than you can possibly eat. And that's good. That's how we should be. That's how religion should be. But sometimes religion has this idea of good and evil, this tension, and we don't always lift everyone up. As they say, people who attend religious community have better health outcomes. And that's often thrown out to those people who don't have a religious background. But if you explore it a bit deeper between the numbers, it depends on What type of God do you believe in? If you believe in a loving, caring, compassionate God, you have better health outcomes. If you believe in a punishing, judgmental God, your health outcomes are worse than if you're an atheist. Fortunately, we hold that loving, compassionate, caring, justice-seeking God. Religion, at its best, is about positive culture change, and we need to change our culture. We need to change our culture to remove the stigma of mental health disease. We need to change our culture to provide better medical care, both the resources and the insurance to cover it. And we need to stop politicians blaming every mass shooting on mental health and not guns, because every country has mental health struggle, but they do not have the mass shootings we have in the United States. That's a justice issue too. And we also need to train our police to handle mental health concerns. Fortunately, we're starting to get more social work and mental health training for police. And that is important as well, because too often, people with mental illness are killed by untrained police when they're having an episode. That needs to be part of the training. There's so many justice issues that I really believe we need to work on as a community, because I think we're impacted here. And when we have been most successful as a religion in justice issues, it's when we have felt impacted. You look at the work we did with the LGBTQ community, who are so much a part of our community. Look at the work we have done there with marriage equality, with equal rights. We are fighting the fight in Texas to stop transgender teenagers getting abused by the government. Do you know 50% of transgender teens attempt suicide? 50%, 50. Why is the government picking those as a target? We have to stop politicians doing that. Because if we can provide transgender teens and LGBTQ folk a connection to a community, that is a justice issue. Mental health is a justice issue. Because ultimately we are a religion of hope. We're life-affirming, life-enhancing, and I think in this case we can be life-saving. We can be a sanctuary for those struggling. We can be a supportive presence for them. We can listen to them. We can see the good in them that the people might not be able to see themselves. We can be healing through our presence. We can answer our Unitarian Universalist call of love by being with them in their struggle, sitting with them in their tears, listening to them in their fears, reaching out to them when we are concerned for them, and being present for them in that darkest hour. We can sit down next to them in their darkest hour at 4 a.m. in the morning. That's what we can do as individuals, that's what we can do as a church, and that's what we can do as a religious movement. And this is how we'll make our love real in the world and to the people who need it.